My wife was someone I considered to be very respectable and old-fashioned. She worked hard and only had one boyfriend before she met me. We got married when she was 23 and I was 26. While we were together, I never would have imagined us breaking up, but our marriage only lasted for 3 short years. She was a claims adjuster for an insurance company, and there were a few occasions when she would take the train to start her day's route. My wife really enjoyed her job, but she didn't like the train days. That is until she told me otherwise. For some reason, like the flip of a switch, she started to love the train. I asked how that was possible, and she just shrugged and said it felt like an adventure. In the past, she was always freaked out about so many people being packed together. She was claustrophobic and enjoyed her personal space. She swore somebody intentionally touched her butt one time, but she couldn't prove it. So her sudden enjoyment of the train ride was odd, and then she started zoning out when we did meaningful things together. My wife liked to do Sudoku and word puzzles with a pen and paper, and that's also how she journaled. She would journal every night before we went to bed, and one night she started writing after we had an argument. I didn't appreciate her obvious disinterest in anything we did together. Before this, we had great face-to-face communication, but now she wouldn't look at me as much. She just denied what I was seeing and wrote angrily in her journal. She trusted me not to read it, because it was just her way of cooling down and keeping herself in check. But I was desperate for a clue. She knew how important communication was, and now that she was refusing to do it, something was wrong. She tried to say that I was the one freaking out about nothing, and she actually convinced me I was being too hard on her. She said she was just exhausted from work. So our life and relationship continued on for the next 4 months without us communicating the way we usually did. I felt like I was living with a roommate, not my wife. We still did things together, but she was somewhere else, mentally. I tried a few more times to talk to her about what I was feeling, but she started to groan loudly anytime she realized that's what I was going to say. She said if I kept making her feel bad for working hard and just living life with me, she would stay at her dad's for a few days. I never wanted her to leave. I wanted her to come back to me the way she used to be. I missed her, so whenever she brought up leaving, I changed the subject because I didn't want to ruin the relationship I was trying to get back. Little did I know it was already gone. She finally left for her dad's. She said it was only for a few days, but I had a bad feeling something was going to happen. I decided to read her journal, because she forgot it at her house. I instantly regretted all the trust I put in her, and waited so long to read it. I started reading from the most recent entry, and it was full of her annoyance towards me. And she quickly referred to another time she went to AP's house for a quickie through her work route. She wrote a pros and cons list about me and AP, concluding that he was better than me in several ways. She mentioned the train rides she and AP took together, and some of the entries were while she sat on the train beside him. There were some tic-tac-toe and hangman games on the pages. Needless to say, all of this angered me for a number of reasons. In the pros and cons list, she didn't mention that I was paying our mortgage, which should certainly be a pro for me, right? She also didn't mention how I continually tried to communicate with her, or how patient I was even though she obviously put me on the back burner. She didn't mention that I started doing extra work around the house, or that she hadn't done laundry or dishes in months. She was comparing me to some strangers she just happened to become friends with on the train. This guy was somehow at my level or beyond, according to her, even though I was the one who was dedicated and loyal to her. I chose to marry her, and we were together for 6 years total at this point. If she thought this loser was worth leaving me for, I was going to make her follow through with it because she was gonna see how wrong she was. I went to Lowe's the next day while she was still at her dad's house and changed our locks. I told her dad not to let her come home, but he was confused because she wasn't at his house. That just made my mission even more clear, so I told him that if she heard from her, to let her know she lost a good man. He actually said he was sorry to hear that and wanted to know more. I told him all that I found out, and he was really blown away and disappointed. He said I had his word not to let her move back in or help her out because she didn't need to treat me like this. He said he raised her to be respectable to men and behave like a lady. She should know that if there were any relationship problems, she could go to her father, not cheat on me. What bums me out is that she really was a lady the way he described for the 6 years I was with her, before she met this guy, and let him mess up her head. She called me right after this and asked if I was ready to let things go back to normal, like the issue between us was my fault. I told her I wasn't, and I actually never would be. I told her things couldn't go back to normal because she cheated on me. I heard her drop her phone. When she picked it back up, she asked what I was talking about. I said I read her journal. I didn't tell her I took a picture of her entry regarding the extra stops she made for personal pleasure while on the clock. I already emailed it to her company's HR, along with her employee badge number, and a text explaining the situation and why I was so sure this was true. She was freaking out, even without knowing she could lose her job. She was telling me she wasn't ready to lose me, and her journal meant nothing. It was full of lies and daydreams that she wrote down to practice her handwriting, but for no other reason. I told her I wasn't going to forgive her for this, or believe her entries meant nothing. She was gonna live out what she daydreamed and acted on. She showed up at the house and realized she couldn't get in, so she called her dad in a panic. She said she cheated on her husband and needed to move back in. After a pause, she started sobbing loudly, screaming in frustration. The neighbors started coming out, and one actually came onto the yard to ask her if she was okay. She was embarrassed, so she got back in her car with her dad on the phone and drove away. I know she slept in our shed that night, after she tried calling me 20 times from her car. I watched her from the window while she carried blankets back there. Then in the morning, she started pounding on the door with new determination because she found out she was fired and she had to go to the bathroom. I mockingly asked her why she didn't just go to a therapist for support. She was afraid he wasn't ready for her to move in, and a request would scare him away. She expected to be able to take advantage of me while she got to know him better. You have no idea how relieved I am that her plan didn't work out. I dared her to ask him while she stood in our yard, so she did, and it was painful to watch. At first, she just asked if she could come stay for a while, and he said no. I started laughing while she explained that he was her only option because she was being kicked out by her husband for seeing him. He still said no. That guy knew what he wanted in life, and he didn't want her. OP, I'm so sorry your wife fell for a random stranger on her commute to work and continued developing the relationship behind your back. I feel like as her husband, you had every right to read her journal. Anything she writes on paper counts as a clue to the truth, and in an honest relationship, there shouldn't be any drastic secrets such as this. I like how you handled this. You were thoughtful and took deliberate steps to make sure your wife was going to face her life choice head-on. She certainly would have continued to take advantage of you if you forgave her or didn't read her journal. You stood firm and didn't care what she had to say. I hope you're doing well nowadays and have a peaceful place to call your own. You know how important communication is and deserve a happy relationship. I wish you all the best going forward. Now for today's second story. My girlfriend and I were dating for 2 years when her 25th birthday came around. This was the longest relationship she had out of several boyfriends. She wanted the theme of her party to be forever young, so a few of her close friends met us at a carnival. Some of her friends brought their kids. I was pretty sure I was going to propose to her. I was looking at rings in my spare time, so I knew I was losing my mind. I've heard that's a sign you're in love when you lose your mind and common sense. We had a great time walking around the carnival and riding mildly amusing rides. Her friends went home, and she noticed the big circus tent at the end of the carnival, so we went to go check it out. For a while, she had been set on us starting a horseback riding business together, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for that commitment. However, as we walked through the tent and saw all the beautiful horses, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I got down on one knee and proposed, and she said yes. We've been happily married for 5 years now, and our horseback riding business is thriving. I couldn't be happier with my decision to propose at the carnival. Starting horseback riding lessons together was a lucky day for us. We came across a clean-looking cowboy standing beside a white horse. My girlfriend walked directly towards him and introduced herself, but she didn't introduce me. He told her he was a horse trainer and brought his horses here to perform with some volunteers. It wasn't as big as a circus, but the kids still enjoyed it, and it helped him promote his business. My girlfriend spoke to him and looked at him like he was an angel. I was annoyed and wanted to leave, so I suggested that we should get going. She looked upset and quickly asked for his business card so she could schedule horseback riding lessons for us at his local stable. Life pretty much went back to normal, as far as I could tell. Time passed by without her mentioning horseback riding lessons to me. When I finally asked about it, she seemed like she had rehearsed how she was going to answer me. She said they didn't have enough beginner horses to do a double lesson. She paused before adding that she did still schedule a lesson for the next day. She said it hesitantly, as if she was trying to gauge my response. I told her I'd still like to go along with her, even if I wasn't on a horse. She asked why, and I said because I didn't want to miss out on spending time with her, doing something she loved, even if I couldn't do it too. She was speechless for a bit, and finally said she'd just cancel it, because she wouldn't feel right letting me just stand there and watch. I thought that was really weird and unreasonable, considering how flexible I was being. It was like she really didn't want me there, at the stable with her and the horse trainer for some reason. So I trusted her and believed that she had canceled her lesson. She had never lied to me before, and if she really wanted to be with me, she wouldn't start lying or going behind my back. I promised myself that if I found out anything weird was happening, I was going to break up with her. Even if it was just her taking horseback riding lessons with this guy after telling me she wouldn't, that was enough for me to end things. Little did I know she was already taking lessons. She started going the week after the carnival. She usually came over to my house at least 4 times a week, for hours at a time, and sometimes even slept over. She had a place with a roommate she wasn't really fond of, but most of her belongings were at her adoptive mother's house. Whenever she came over, she smelled clean and looked fresh. I didn't see any signs that she had been at a stable or anything that would make me question her. Until one day, she came over later than expected, wearing a jacket I hadn't seen before that smelled like horses and had horsehair on it. I didn't notice it right away because she hung it up as soon as she walked in. Her excuse for being late was that she got a flat tire and had to wait for AAA to come help her. I told her she could have called me, but she said she didn't think I knew how to change a tire. I knew it was just an excuse for her not wanting me to be the one to help her. But it wasn't AAA that helped her either. After she went to bed, more tired than usual, I couldn't help but wonder what she was really doing during those horseback riding lessons. I saw her phone light up. I looked at it, and I could see message previews. It was from AP, programmed as the same name as the stable guy's name. It only said, "I've had a great time with you. You're great in bed." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. What were the chances he'd texted the exact thing I needed to know? I decided to call him from my phone to talk, since I couldn't unlock my girlfriend's phone. I found his business card in her horsehair jacket. I started by thanking him for changing my girlfriend's flat tire. He was confused as to how I knew that, but said it was no problem. I asked him if he had just broken up with my girlfriend via text, and he hung up on me. He sent another text to her phone that said, "Sorry, our affair ruined your relationship. Don't come back for lessons." While my girlfriend slept, I packed everything she had in my house into 3 gift bags. I set them by the front door, and when I heard her getting up, I peeked into the room. She was frantically flipping pillows in the blanket, looking under the bed trying to find her phone. She looked around the room and noticed me standing there. I asked her what she was looking for, but she could tell by my tone that I wasn't happy or stupid. She silently looked at me and looked scared, like a child. I told her to come out to the living room. She met me out there, noticing the gift bags with her stuff, and how clean my apartment was without her belongings scattered around. I handed her back her phone and told her to get out of my house. She had the audacity to freak out on me, telling me she couldn't lose me and needed me in her life permanently. She expected me to be in her life forever. I told her she had accidentally said the word forever when she obviously just meant until she knew for certain that AP wanted her as much as she wanted him. She said he didn't mean anything to her, and she wanted me. I said it was a good thing he didn't mean anything to her, because he had just dumped her this morning. Her jaw dropped, and she looked at her phone. That's when she really started freaking out. She was gripping her hair and shaking. I tried to say something to her, but she cut me off by screaming at me to shut up. I had enough. I kicked the gift bags out the door, making some of her stuff go flying. She sat there and rethought her life for an hour. She was throwing a fit. Eventually, she picked up her stuff and drove away. She didn't come back to my house again. I heard she went back to her crappy roommate and started fighting with her on a daily basis. Afterwards, they went to court over who should have to move out of the place, and my ex lost. She went back to her elderly adoptive mother's cluttered house. So, that's the tale of how our promising relationship came to an end, because my girlfriend was a sleazy and selfish girl who refused to mature or accept that she was a liar who didn't deserve a man to commit to her. OP, I am so sorry your girlfriend lied to you and went behind your back to see AP. It takes a thoughtful and self-aware person to know who they're looking for in life and maturity to know when it's time. When it's time to break up or resist temptation, it's important to have the maturity to know when to do so. It may seem like the relationship you had with your ex was fine until she was presented with someone to compare you to. However, comparisons are completely unfair to everyone. Each person is unique with their own trials, personal challenges, and goals. When you choose to love someone, you choose to love them for who they are, including their challenges. You help them work through the things they face, and they do the same for you. Wanting another person while you're in a healthy relationship is the same as believing the grass is greener on the other side. But the truth is, you can't have both lawns, and one lawn is certainly no better than the other. If your partner changes, it's important to change with them for the better. Grow together and learn from each other's experiences. If they change for the worse, try to help them figure out why and communicate. And if neither of those options is possible, and the situation only gets worse, then it's time to part ways, not cheat. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope you were able to heal from this situation. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care, everyone.